Good evening. Welcome to our channel, our conversation tonight with U.S. Senate candidate Kenneth Harper out of North Carolina. This is the Make Our Voice Known channel where our mission is to educate, motivate, and to activate. We're excited to speak with Ken to hear about his journey to running for the U.S. Senate and just to get to know him, and for you as citizens of North Carolina or just other interested parties to understand Ken's background and what he can provide as a senator from the great state of North Carolina. So welcome, Ken. Good evening. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, Sean. Truly, it is a blessing to be here tonight with you and your wonderful audience. And thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak about our platform, my background, and truly the Republican difference that we're trying to make here in the United States Senate race here in 2022.
Awesome. Great. So, Ken, for those who don't know about your background and some of your experiences, if you wouldn't mind just taking us through a journey of your background and your experiences.
Absolutely. Well, I first of all will start with I am married. I have four beautiful daughters, and I have a grandson. Matter of fact, my daughters are college and high school age and grown. As a matter of fact, I'm an entrepreneur and a business owner. My company is called Harper. It stands for Helping Americans Resolve Problems and Creating Opportunity. And I've worked in the financial service industry with insurance, investments, and securities for the last 16 years. But prior to that, I've worked in the automotive industry, home security industry, but I was a Kirby vacuum cleaner distributor when I was 20 years old. That was my first business. And I actually worked with Kirby for over a decade.
Wow.
So really learning how to sell and recruit and train and develop people. Personal development is something that really is near and dear to my heart. But if we just kind of segue in the last 7 years, something that I'm very proud of is I've worked strategically in the churches, the schools, and prisons teaching financial literacy. And so I'm originally from High Point, North Carolina. That's where I grew up, went to school. Didn't go to college. I'm an autodidactic, meaning I'm self-taught. So again, I've been an entrepreneur for the last 26 years, and I'm an avid reader and a lover of history. And so when I got into the financial service industry, it opened up a whole world to me from the perspective of really seeing a huge need to provide insurance and financial literacy in the community. And I served on several boards in Guilford County. One is called Heads Up for our youth, where I work directly with at-risk youth, and police officers of kind of really bridging that gap and cultivating that relationship. And I taught financial literacy to the children. And another thing is I work with the Cherie Denise Jackson Foundation, which was a teacher that was murdered through domestic violence. Unfortunately, I believe it happened there in Charlotte. As a matter of fact, she was a school teacher. And so I was on the board. I was their treasurer and their chairman. And then I also worked with the Welfare Liaison Project, where I went directly in prisons here in Caswell County and different counties abroad in North Carolina. But one of the things that that really opened up my eyes to where I am today is I actually was placed on a board. Got an opportunity to work with the Rainbow Push Coalition, which was under Reverend Jesse Jackson. It wasn't something that I sought, by the way. It was just, one of the things that I'm really trying to teach the Republican Party is the Democrats, they actually recruit and train and develop people.
They do. You're right. They do intentionally. They do. Exactly.
And I was apolitical, meaning that I was raised in a Christian home.
Yeah.
I've been a born again believer all my life. I was raised in the church. Matter of fact, Pastor Gould, I remember as a small, me and my dad had this conversation. My dad told me the first time Pastor Gould was actually came around, we knew about him, was a church we were affiliated with called Word of Life. Mm-hmm. And this goes back into the late 80s, mid 80s, because I was a small child. And so I was raised in a Christian home and had Christian values, but I was apolitical when I became adult, meaning that, my issue was I definitely was against abortion. And I never stood for a homosexual marriage. I respect every individual, but these things just were a contrast with my faith and my personal belief. Right. But when I got on the board with Rainbow Push Coalition, it really opened up my eyes because I really got to see where the money was coming from. I really got to see how they used the political pulpit as a position of political propaganda to really keep the people in the dark. And And then I began to study President Trump because I was an entrepreneur. And so my business was growing year over year. And I actually created my own radio show called The Baton of Economic Justice. I did all this because I was curious and I wanted to actually speak to both sides. So, and I'll end with this and let you, segue. But the thing that really got me was, one, I started to look at President Trump's policies as relates with the Abraham Accords and how he lined up with Israel.
Mm-hmm.
I saw how he was securing our borders. I even saw with the First Step Act how he was actually going back, trying to fix laws that in our criminal justice system that had put many in the African-American community away for decades, how many of these individuals were being released from prison, how he was helping the HBCUs. So it was just like, wow. And I started reading his policies. And so really, I tell people I'm a recovering Democrat.
I know exactly what you mean by that, because that's so typical. And it's funny that you mentioned that's a wealth of history that we're definitely going to touch on as far as your experience. And it's interesting that you talk about the whole shifting that I see happening in particular amongst Black men, because to your point, Black men are naturally entrepreneurial and naturally want to assume the position that God has placed us in. And you're right, there's that dichotomy between what the Democratic Party wants, and unfortunately, sometimes the Republican Party ignores the interests and the desires of the Black family, in particular Black men. So what have you seen in your campaign in terms of any outreach that the Republican Party has done? Has it improved? And you coming from your perspective, what kind of obstacles and challenges do you run into being a Black man running as a Republican?
My, brother. I don't know if we got enough time on your show.
We got all the time you need.
Let me condense it. Well, let me say this. I went through my own metamorphosis. Matter of fact, I just recently did a speech that they can look me up at ncvoteharper.com, by the way. But if they go to my Facebook page, there's a speech that's pinned at the top of my Facebook page, and it's called The Conversion of a Confused Conservative. Because there was a process that I went through. One, I started learning about socialism and communism and Marxism. And one of the things that I began to learn was there's a book, I believe it's called Color, Communism and Common Sense by Manning Jennings. And the book really talks about how the Republican Party initially, by the way, the Republican Party was started by a former slave named Abraham Galloway, who really, the slaves and white legislators here in North Carolina really came together strategically because they knew popular sovereignty could not continue to spread across the United States from the perspective that the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution really would be worth the paper that it was written on, from the perspective of saying all men, we all are equal. And so they knew that we could not continue to allow this cancer of slavery to metastasize. And so the Whig Party, the Republicans left the Whig Party and started the Republican Party. And so that history within itself has truly been suppressed because the first legislators that were Black Republicans. And many of them hail from Eastern North Carolina, where I'm sitting today in Wilmington, which was the first coup d'etat that actually took place in American history. And so when we look at the Republican Party today, and matter of fact, let me kind of segue back where I was talking about that book, Color, Communism, and Common Sense. Well, during the period of the Reconstruction period, Rutherford B. Hayes, which was a Republican president, there was a conflict between the Republicans and the Democrats. And they said that the Democrats and the Republicans had a meeting. And they said, hey, listen, we'll find you enough votes for Rutherford B. Hayes to be the Republican president, but you need to remove the federal troops that are protecting the Blacks during the Reconstruction period. And by the way, the Blacks were rising up politically, socially, and economically in a way that was unprecedented. Here you had former slaves arguing on the floor as congressmen against their former taskmasters and slave drivers and standing up for freedom and liberty. Oh my God, it's just so much history that I get excited talking about it. But let's talk about it today. How we really got to where we are. Well, when Rutherford B. Hayes got in and removed those troops, that was the beginning of two things: the Jim Crow era and the Democratic machine. Ford Simmons, who was a senator out of New Bern, created the Democratic machine, which was propaganda that he utilized to scare whites because Black people were actually raising up and taking political power. And so they created the propaganda to scare whites that Blacks were pretty much going to try to take over politically, and they would be suppressed by Blacks. And that propaganda actually worked, and it's still working today.
Yes, yes, it is. And they're still using it today. and it's crazy. It's still working. People still being deceived. That is so true. That is so true.
Yeah. So I would just say to bring it back today and to kind of give people perspective. When we no longer had a political island with the Republicans. We actually swam in the beginning of the 19th century and were recruited by Russians and actually taught communism because we felt we had no political wherewithal. And one of the culprits of that was W.E. Du Bois, who was the first PhD who ushered in Margaret Sanger, who had been working with Hitler from the perspective of eugenics, and removing individuals who they felt were not worthy of society. And so when they brought that communism back here to the United States, because they knew that was the only way to destroy the United States from within. And so it entered into our pulpits, our schools, our universities, our trade unions. And so here it is now. It has metastasized into a communist revolution that we're seeking right now. And I have to say, most people of color don't know what Marxism is, don't know what communism is. In the Republican Party, I'm sad to say this, but the Republican Party is not telling the story well. Because in retrospect, even if you look at Frederick Douglass and the role that he played in the relationship that he had with Abraham Lincoln, the Republican Party hasn't did this relationship any due just. That it truly deserves and should be promoted. And so the Republican Party is broken down into three factions. One, I'd say you've got the old guard who continue to do the same old thing, expecting a different result. And then the second group is fighting the first group. And then the third group don't want anything to do with the GOP whatsoever. And so as an entrepreneur and a businessman in the financial service business, what I see from both parties is there's no succession plan. See, in the Democratic Party, you have the old bourgeoisie, civil rights movement people who truly want to utilize what they did in the 60s for personal political gain and manipulation and straight dark evil. And as it relates to the Republican Party in the old faction, they haven't even brought their children in. I've been in 85 counties, and brother, let me tell you, when you go in these counties, I mean, good gracious, the Republicans, I hate to say it, man, they are dying. Okay. Yeah. The Republican parties, they have not brought the Generation X in. They have not brought the millennials. They have not brought their children, their grandchildren. And so sadly, I believe if change, if the grassroots don't get organized, and see, that's the other component. The grassroots are somewhat discombobulated right now on the Republican side. See, as bad as Democratic policies are, they still can get people out to the polls just because they've got technology. They've got boots on the ground. They've got people knocking doors. They've got people making calls. Okay, and if you sing out of tune with the Democrats, like they're gonna pull you to the side, like, bro, we singing in B. Okay, you over in C flat,
exactly.
Bro. You need to get yourself together.
Get your act together. Yeah,
or you're gonna be off the choir.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And the Republicans basically is about backstabbing. It's all about backbiting. And don't know how to work together strategically. And that's exactly how they lost the majority back at the end of the 19th century. And the Democratic machine basically bust up the Republican Party. But that's just a little history. I just wanted to kind of give that perspective because, man, nobody is talking about this.
No.
This history about Abraham Galloway, the former slave who started this. Brother, let me tell you something. Abraham Galloway started this Republican Party in North Carolina. Do you know he helped actually recruit 160,000 Black troops that came with the first United States colored troops? That's what they called them, the 35th, the first Black troops. He helped bring that together, man. And
Wow.
I mean, it's just amazing how many Black millionaires that also was up north with the Underground Railroad and also
Exactly.
went all the way up to Canada, where my wife is from. So, like,
Exactly.
man, we got to really understand and what a conservative platform is. A
Right.
conservative means you got something to conserve. And
True.
see, when you got a family, that's exactly what you need to do. You need to protect your family. You need to have the right to be able to, number one, have God as the forefront of that family. Our Constitution, in essence, the tenets of the Constitution come from Judeo-Christian
Mm,
biblical principles of how we should have life, liberty, and pursue that with the leading of God. And as a family, we want to protect our children because they are the posterity, they are the future,
yep.
and the hope of America. So, these are just some of the things, man, that I've learned and seen. And I believe that, and I still didn't touch on what you asked me. I told you I apologize. I didn't know how much time
Hey,
we
we
had.
free flowing. We're having a conversation. I told you to go with it because,
Well,
and
let's
that's
talk a little bit
important.
about the campaign then. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
we
Brother
will.
Sean.
Yeah,
Go
it's
ahead,
not.
Brother
You're
Sean.
good. You're good, Ken. You could, and that's what I want to bring out because throughout all this uproar about critical race theory, all this stuff that people been complaining about, yes, we are against the indoctrination that has been going on for over 100 years that started with James Dewey, who wanted to infiltrate public schools and who's changed things and have people believing that snow is black. So things like that has been going on for over 100 years. Like you mentioned, the public school system has been infiltrated. Churches have been infiltrated.
Yes.
Everything the government has touched has been infiltrated with that communist, Marxist, socialist ideology. But it's so important that we also, while we refrain from talking about that kind of history, that we also talk about true history, like you mentioned, because that's real history. We want that to be taught as well. And that's not being taught. So we're not getting the full picture. It's not balanced. So
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So I appreciate that you're bringing that knowledge. And I don't think any other candidate that's running your field has the ability, number one, to articulate that, and number two, has the interest or desire to even investigate or even know about it. So my question to you is about your campaign. What are some of the major obstacles that you run into in this crowded field of 14 people running for Senate?
Well, let's really talk about that. Let's really kind of break that down.
Yeah.
First and foremost, I'm going to say 7 to 8 of those individuals, maybe 10. That might be a little high, but I'm going to say 7 to 8 of those individuals have not worked in the United States Senate. They haven't built a campaign, meaning I'm just seeing some of these people maybe 2 or 3 months ago. Okay. I started this process 15 months ago. Okay. Yeah. I literally haven't worked my own personal business in a year and a half. I probably got some insurance clients upset with me, but I got to do what God called me to do. It's okay. They're going to be all right. But my point is, a lot of these individuals, man, are truly not doing what it takes to resonate with the constituents, for people to know who they are, their platform, truly what they stand for, their background, and where do they actually come from. And so, and then when you look at what the Republican Party has done in the United States Senate race, is they actually created a platform of partiality. Okay. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is they feel that they can pretty much pick and choose who they want to speak and articulate their platforms, and who they want the electorate to hear, which is completely unconstitutional. And this is one of the reasons why I didn't take any PAC money. I didn't take any special interest money. I did this by the grace of God with hardworking constituents who supported me, like you and others, from the perspective of giving me an opportunity to speak on their show, on their radio, on their podcast, doing a newspaper article about me, donating $500, couple $100, $520, or whatever it was. And I raised about $34,000 doing that, which, by the way, no name, no political pedigree. That's pretty good for the first time coming out the gate. No political coach, no political backing, and really nothing but opposition from day one. The first day that I actually went to the convention last May to speak, I was a candidate. I was registered with the FEC, and the chairman didn't even literally want to let me speak. If it wasn't for the Black conservatives and the gentleman from my home county who I built a relationship with, they were not even going to allow me to speak. So that has continued for the last 15 months. There was a debate on Fox 8 about, I believe last week. There was a debate on Fox 8. The reason why I was able to speak on that debate stage was because Fox 8 media company has a threshold of $50,000 in order for you to speak on that stage. Well, let's go back about a month ago. A month ago, I was really getting close to that goal. As I said, I raised about $34,000. So I had a nice fundraiser put together and started promoting it. And we had 140 people, Brother Sean, registered for this fundraiser. Wow. Man, do you know that 110 of those we found on the night of the fundraiser, that it was 110 bogus emails, and the emails were linked all the way back to Germany? What? So, and that's exactly right. Yes, sir. But my voice has been suppressed. I haven't been able to, the John Locke Foundation didn't allow me to speak. I wasn't able to speak in the Wake County Convention, okay? And let me say this about Charlotte. The black, I ain't gonna name no names, okay? Because I'm gonna be respectful. But there's been black conservatives there in Charlotte. And that's why I was so grateful when Pastor Gould, I didn't even think that Pastor Gould was even gonna call my name. It was the favor of God, man. I didn't know that. I was so humble because I had made a call to the church. Because of that speech, I got an opportunity, the conversion of the confused conservative. Because of that speech, I ended up getting connected to one of your members at the church who connected me to pastor's assistant. And I thought I was going to have a private meeting just to shake his hand. I didn't know that he was going to recognize me as a United States Senate candidate. That was the favor of God. I've been trying to get in Mecklenburg County literally to speak for over a year. Let me say this: the elite conservatives in Mecklenburg County. Matter of fact, there's a women's group of Republicans there. And they recently had a luncheon, and they invited Pat McCrory, Mark Walker, Ted Budd, and Eastman. By the way, all these candidates are utilizing major PAC dollars, okay? Political action committees. Now, I don't have a problem if your PAC is really representing the constituents and is not trying to manipulate and buy the candidate to make votes when you get into office, meaning that you're voting the voice of the constituents, okay? And not following our Constitution. But going back to those women, they first and foremost, they know I'm a candidate, okay? I've been in over 80 counties, and they did polling, okay? And at the end of that polling, 40% of those ladies still didn't know who they were going to vote for, okay? The United States Senate race also has had a 21% poll that shows there's 21% of undecideds, okay, as well. And so I also, with the polling that I did do, with the opportunities, Mark Walker was in about 4 of these polls, and I finished in second behind him with live audiences, okay, who did the polling. And then from there, my polling went literally off a cliff. And so I've been blocked. My fundraisers have been sabotaged. Many places have not allowed me to speak, and some places have not even invited me. So nonetheless, these are just some of the these are just some of the things that we've went through. And people don't know sometimes the sacrifices that you go through. I mean, man, I'm sitting here talking on a friend's computer because my computer is definitely been hacked. Something's been going on with my computer for weeks now. Brother, there's a lot of different things that we go through. Some things I don't even want to say publicly yet that have happened to me. I'm not going to say them just yet. But I'm just letting you know, man. I need the prayers of the righteous, man. For real. Because this is no joke. We're in spiritual warfare. We need to understand these times. I heard a call. That's why I ran. This was not on my to-do list. I was doing well in my own business, doing extremely well, traveling around the country, minding my business. And the Lord told me, I heard it clear as day. He said, I want you to get into the United States Senate race. I said, Lord, how can I compete against them? They have millions. And I heard it clear as day. He said, yes, they have millions, but you will have the miracle. And that's what we're holding. That's what I'm standing on, Sean. I'm standing on my miracle. I'm trusting God, because he said, trust in the Lord with all thy heart and lean not into thy own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. And God has given us favor the same way he did on Easter Sunday when Pastor Gould introduced me to the whole entire congregation. That's the favor of God. And those are the types of things we've been happening in spite of the plans of the enemy.
That's right. That's right. And it's so true, because, what God has for you, nobody can stop it. If God is for you, who can be against you? No weapon formed against you will prosper. So that doesn't matter what what people try to do, what man tries to do. If God has his hands on you, and if he's ordained it, they can keep fighting, they can keep clawing, but they will not stop it and they will not prevent it. So that's crazy that you tell me that, because I was sensing that, because you only hear in the media, which I know is being controlled by, and it's so sad that you say this, that now I hope people's eyes are being open to what truly goes on behind the curtains with the establishment Republicans who have their fingers on the scale, who they want to select, they'll select that person, and who they want to diminish and demean, they'll do that. And it's so sad, because that's not what our founding fathers had in mind. That's not what they intended when they created this republic. Exactly. The representatives, senators, are supposed to represent the people, not the Club for Growth, not the PAC. They're supposed to represent the people, not the shadow money that's over in the corner that's spending money. Because as you know this, whoever is giving you money, there are strings attached. Absolutely. So you are no longer independent. You will not make decisions based upon what the will of the people is. You make decisions based upon the will of the people that give you money. That's where your decision we made. So it's so important that you mentioned that, because I think a lot of people are clueless to that. Yeah. They just go along with who people place in front of them, and they don't take the time to do the research to understand where the candidates stand. It's one thing to know about the platform of the party, but it's another thing to know about the platform of the candidate. So speaking of your platform, I know that you have what you call the Republican difference. So what does that mean, the Republican difference? Well, I mean, you've alluded to a lot of the issues that are taking place strategically in the Republican Party. And so the Republican difference, in essence, I want people to see really, truly what conservatism is and what it actually is, its authenticity and what it actually represents. And so the Republican difference there's three components that I say: resolution, restoration, and revitalization. And when you look at what has taken place in our country over the last 2 years, the resolution is the Constitution, because really the Constitution governs this constitutional republic. It lets us know what our rights are, which are protected by the Constitution. And it also should be a lens of opportunity for us to kind of view the landscape that is taking place in America. It shows that our legislators are not following our Constitution. And so I believe that we need restoration. And what I mean by that is, one, we need to secure our borders. We cannot be a sovereign nation allowing millions of illegals to flood across our borders, not knowing who these individuals are, not vetted, even basically trying to rescind Title 42 that protects us. When you say we're in the midst of a pandemic, why would you basically rescind a title that potentially will protect your citizens from being exposed to people who have diseases from outside countries? And then not only that, but when we see basically the increase of drug trafficking, sex trafficking, the border patrol basically being overrun. We didn't even have this problem prior to the last administration, because we had a wall being put in place. And we know that even Nehemiah, when the walls were destroyed, he requested to the king that he could leave and go back and rebuild the walls and secure the country. And so this is one of the things that I believe we have to do. I was talking to a group of 14-year-old students about fentanyl. And let me be completely transparent with you. Back in our day, I think, you ain't got no gray hair. You look good. I'm 46. I'm probably older than you. But back in our day, we could try a little bit of marijuana and nothing happened to you. But these kids today, if they try a little bit of fentanyl, brother, the lights can go out for them. Yep. And so I've been talking to children and warning them. And by the way, when I was talking to these children, just lo and behold, a teacher had the nerve. My Lord, one of us walked in and want to tell me that I'm racist because I'm talking about illegal immigration. Are you serious? And I'm warning, yes, I'm serious. And at Gifford Technical Community College in High Point, telling me that I'm a racist because I'm talking to children about illegal immigration and about fentanyl coming into our country. And man, those 14-year-olds, man, we don't give our children enough credit. Them 14-year-olds, they came up at the end of my speech and shake my hand. And some of them gave me a hug.
and they said, man, we appreciate you because don't nobody talk to us the way that you
Nope.
talking to us
Nope.
today. And so I'm passionate about our children. Okay,
Yeah.
I've got
Yeah.
4 daughters. Okay, and you know, first and foremost, I was a young father. When my first daughter is 27 years old. She was born 2 weeks after I graduated high school. So first of all, the way that I was raised, I knew abortion was never an option. So I've always been pro-life. And I'm glad to see that we are making some segue with Roe versus Wade. Now, the way that it has came about, that this information was leaked from the Supreme Court, we have to get to the bottom of this, because I believe that this was an attack from the left who wanted to basically send some signals and rile people up from the perspective of trying to get this opinion going in the opposite direction. But I truly believe, even though this is a draft opinion, I do believe, because the prayers that have been going up, and because we have 5 justices that see that this is unconstitutional, you don't even find the right of abortion within our Constitution. And so here it is, the Supreme Court is giving us an opportunity, by the grace of God, to put this back into the hands of the states, where it should be. And also, too, Judge Alito mentioned in his 98-page opinion from the perspective that this cannot even be wrote into the law as it pertains to Congress. So he also is giving them a heads up that no, this decision lies within the states and it lies within the people. And so I don't support critical race theory in schools. You know what, man? Good gracious. I am so tired of this victimhood mentality.
I know, man.
That we have suppressed all the successes, the success story, how our ancestors rose up out of slavery and became senators, became congressmen. In Wilmington, North Carolina, where I'm sitting right now today, Wilmington literally was a town that was ran by African Americans and Blacks. And during the 18th century period, beginning of 19th century period, African Americans had the highest rates of marriage. We also had higher medium incomes than many white Americans, okay? And then basically, when we looked at the Great Society policies from the 60s under LBJ, these policies decimated the home. It removed the father from the home. It increased poverty. It increased incarceration. And really, in retrospect, set us up on my Lord,
destructive path. Yeah, you're right.
Thank you.
It set us up on that destructive path. Yeah, it was intentional. Yes. It set us up with that destructive path. And that's so true. I'm glad you mentioned all those things about the leak that happened with the Supreme Court. It was intentional. Like we talked about before, this is a spiritual battle. That was a satanic release because they want, and it's so funny, as soon as it came out, all of a sudden, you have people protesting on the steps of the Supreme Court. Wow, they got there pretty fast, didn't it?
with pre-printed signs.
Right. Wow, that is amazing.
So we got to get to the bottom of this. I mean, really, we need the Chief Justice Roberts to get to the bottom of this. There needs to be an investigation. The person who did this needs to come forward. If they don't, the clerks need to be fired, and we need to bring in. It's hard to say if we can bring in the FBI and get anything done these days. You know, but we need to get to the bottom of this. And also, if it was linked to any type of justice who leaked this document, they need to be impeached and removed off the bench. And so so I stand also for medical freedom. I also was endorsed for Stand for Health Freedom. I was endorsed by the North Carolina grassroots government. I was also endorsed by a gentleman named Trevor Loudon, who has a syndicated show on Epoch Times, and he produced a new movie. I really want to recommend this movie to you, Sean. It's called Enemies Within the Church.
I've seen it. It's very good. Yeah.
So Trevor endorsed me. Me.
Awesome. Yes. Awesome. Good
yes, sir.
To hear. Good.
Yes, sir. So these are some of the things, the favor that God has bestowed upon me. But I do stand for medical freedom. I do recommend that many of your listeners read the book, The Real Anthony Fauci, that was written by a Democrat, Robert F. Kennedy. And I agree with everything that he's talking about. And then I tell you, it saddens me to see that, especially in our community, we are still wearing masks.
Yes.
When many of these, when we know that long term, it is not good for us to be wearing these masks. They're going to create long term diseases in our health. Also, too, the government does not have any right to constitute that they put any type of vaccine in our body. The lockdowns, also what they did to the churches. First of all, they never had the authority to shut down the church. Nope. And so really, Governor Cooper, that should have been articles of impeachment against the governor to act as a autocrat against us in a constitutional republic.
Yeah. He operated an autocrat. And unfortunately, and I know we don't have the time to really dig into this, but unfortunately, too many Christians, too many pastors bow their knee to him instead of standing up and saying, no, you will not impeach us from being able to do what God has called us to do. We'll keep our doors open. As a matter of fact, victory, we close our doors maybe for like a month or so. But after that, when we realized, there's a scam behind this, we opened up in May of 2020. We've been open ever since. And to God be the glory, we haven't had any issues. So
praise God, man. Yeah, absolutely, man. And in Cowtown, like you said, in the name of a 501c3.
Yeah, that's it.
That's exactly right. But two things that's really important to me is I really want to get some of these old laws off the book, some of these Jim Crow laws off the book that really impede the success of individuals moving forward in our society. And also welfare reform and non-custodial parents. I went through a divorce and I went through the child support system. And mind you, this was after being a father for 2 decades to my children. And man, I could not believe our judicial system. Within a year and a half, I literally, as a 40-year-old man, had to move back in with my parents.
What?
So this is part of my story, brother. This is part of my story, man. And I wrote a play, matter of fact, in 2017 called Crossroads. I produced it. It was a Christian play, and really just kind of talking about the experience of going through divorce, and also that's domestic violence. But it was also from the other end, from the perspective. A lot of men go through domestic violence, but they don't know what to do because they don't want to call the police on their spouse or their wife. And sadly, some men have succumbed to their injuries from a female spouse.
Wow.
And so these are some of the things that we bring to the table. But real quick, the child support system. And this was and I'll tell you this was when I threw my rag in, my towel in with the Democrats. The child support system is deal with non-custodial parents. Non-custodial parents pay $29 billion a year to the child support system through a system. Okay, a lot of people don't even know that it's 29 billion with a B, but we got deadbeat dads, but they connected 29 billion every single year. Okay, now here it is. That system basically takes almost $6 billion of those $29, and they actually send it back to the federal government and not to the actual children that money has been paid to. Absolutely. I've studied this for 8 years. As a matter of fact, before I heard the call to go into office, I was getting ready to release my own program called Parent Support. Okay. I've created a program to offset this because basically what I've learned now campaigning for the last 15 months is many of these judges know that these laws are bad, but they basically can't legislate from the bench.
True. Right.
All of the laws the way that is written. And so many indigenous parents have been saddled with over $151 billion, okay, in child support arrears. And many of these parents never had due process in court, never knew what their rights were, okay? It's nothing but a modern day prison, and it's actually funded by the federal government. And it's another way that actually destroys the nuclear family. Because how could you take a father like me, who's been a father for literally 20 years for over 3 daughters, and within 1 year, I literally lose my place, my car, my credit, okay? And I'm supposed to be providing for my children. And then I got to pay an attorney, okay? So, and we got so many issues in our systems that was designed to destroy the nuclear family. I just pray that I get this opportunity to help parents and families and right the wrongs of almost 6 decades here in the United States of America.
That's awesome, Ken. That's awesome, man. Our conversation has been fire for sure. And we only have 5 minutes left. Man, time has flown by. But I do want to ask you a few questions about what does it mean? I looked on your site and you had a phrase called rational conservative. What does that mean?
Sure. Rational conservative basically is someone that utilizes common sense from the perspective of following our Constitution. Okay,
Right.
many people in the Republican Party, sadly, are seen as radicals, really in retrospect, versus being seen as conservatives who want to follow our Constitution, okay, and do things that protect our Constitution. And other things from the perspective of we can't continue to do the same things and expect for them to work. What I mean by rational, well, many in the Republican Party, they feel like there's nothing that's wrong with the criminal justice system. Well, I beg to differ. Okay,
right.
To me,
I agree.
you're not being rational. Okay, because give me an example. How many people have been on death row and their sentence was overturned after thorough due diligence found that they were completely innocent? So that's what I mean. I'm talking about using our Constitution, using common sense. Even our budget just continues to spread and metastasize with outrageous numbers where and it's not backed by anything now, and we're into debt to China. And so I mean rational from the perspective of protecting the interests of the posterity and following our Constitution and protecting the rights of every American citizen.
Got it. It makes sense. So, Ken, what can people do to help get that message out? I understand you in this crowded field, and there are some challenges against you. People are trying to suppress the message. What can people do to help you out, man, to make sure that this message gets out? Because this is what people need to hear. This is refreshing. People are tired of getting the status quo, tired of hearing what you are told constantly. Every 2 to 4 years, the same people come along, they tell you what they're going to do for you, but in the end of the day, when they get to the office, they don't do anything, they don't uphold their promises, and we repeat the same cycle. That's why people are frustrated. That's why young people are frustrated with the political system, because they don't see any breath of fresh air. They do not see anybody coming with a different message, a message that's real, that's truthful, that speaks to things that pertain to them when it comes to their economics, things that pertain to them when it comes to education, things that pertain to them in their everyday life. So what can people do to assist you to get the message out, to have this spread across especially here in North Carolina, because it's primary season? So what can people do to assist you?
Well, we don't have a whole lot of time. The biggest thing I would say that they could do, one is follow me on social media. Go to ncvoteharper.com, which is my website, but you also can follow me at ncvoteharper on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I have a lot of videos on Facebook. And also, too, call my office. My number is 336-912-3788. If you'd like to pass out flyers and brochures at the polls, we need you to get involved. If you have a group, a church group, or a civic group that you're a part of, we need you to spread the message. If you have like-minded conservatives who are sick and tired of being sick and tired, then the only way that we are going to win on this is going to be a miracle of the grassroots, getting involved, telling our message, and getting people knowing about Ken Harper. And one of the things that I have, and I end with this, that I want to protect. I want to protect the constituents of North Carolina. Is something that I call the Carolina Consensus. And the Carolina Consensus means before I take any vote in the United States Senate, I'm going to actually have a platform where North Carolinians can, they'll see the issue, what I'm voting on, and prior to voting on that, they actually can tell me how they want me to vote. And I'm going to listen to two things. One, my morality, which is the Bible, and two is the constituents of North Carolina. And so before I take every vote, I will actually connect with people here on the ground so they know where I stand and why I voted the way that I voted. And from that perspective, it allows the constituents to know that, hey, we can trust Ken Harper. He's a senator that we can trust. And I've been talking about the Carolina Consensus for the last 15 months. And that's my creation, and that's my idea, because I'm sick and tired of plastic polyurethane politicians trying to pad their pockets and use political propaganda against the people. That's my line too, by the way.
Well, awesome. We got to do this again, Ken. This was awesome.
Okay,
this was a real fire conversation, man. It was great. I mean, time just flew by for sure. But you're a breath of fresh air. I wish you well, brother. I wish you continue divine protection, man, and let God just use you as he sees fit, for sure.
Awesome. And listen, make sure you guys support James Bowers. I fully endorse him. I told him that today, and he's a great man of God. And truly, we need to get behind him as well.
Yeah.
because we need him in office.
Yeah, I had James on Monday. So I spoke with
Okay,
James on
awesome.
Monday. Yeah,
Awesome.
so we have fire conversation with James on Monday. So yes, sir. We
Okay.
got to, for sure.
Thank you so much, Sean.
And
Appreciate you.
Ken,
God
take
bless you.
care.
Tell
God
Pastor
bless
Gould
you.
I said thank you.